I'm like, oh my God, I'm starting to look like an old lady with my cardigan.
I love cardigans.
Hi, Rachie.
Hey, I'm on the old computer. Sorry about my qualities.
Oh, the new one didn't work?
Girl, I practiced earlier today. I have a recording of me practicing, okay? And then I click in tonight and it just keeps going to this like pop-up that looks like it's going to be in the settings. And then it only ever says done.
What did you get?
Like the installer?
Probably. But I'm like, could you just run now?
Yeah, work.
So then I went to this app. I got a Apple Air laptop, I think.
Oh, nice.
I think. Yes.
It's
I
not
think
a
so.
You got a MacBook
my
Air.
face.
MacBook
Is that
Air.
what Kaya got? I don't even know how to use mine. Hers. I don't know how to use it.
Rachel texted me today. She's like, I figured out how to scroll.
I want to
Two
throw
fingers.
this thing out the window. Yeah.
It's an adjustment. When I get on a PC, I get physically angry. I'm like, I cannot operate this because I'm so used to Macs now.
I'm sure once I'm in the flow, I'll be like that. But right now, I just want to freak the out. I'm like, what did I just
That's
do?
how I am when I get on a PC because I'm so used. The last time I really regularly used a PC was like Windows 98. So I'm like, what the fuck is happening here?
And then you want to know what's happening? I've got this allergy headache. So look at how big I printed my notes. Look at this font.
That was my fun in high school when I wanted to fill up the page. Here's my 10-page paper. My font would be like 12.1.
Welcome to Talk Like a Mother Parenting Autism Podcast. We are Jen, Kim, Rachel, and Jaime. Take a seat at our table as we share with hope, humor, and honesty.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Talk Like a Mother Parenting Autism Podcast as we wrap up Series 26, which I just said to Jaime, I can't believe we're wrapping up Series 26. This series was one of my favorites. We talked about waivers and therapies and services and everything in between. It was a great series. What do you ladies think? Hi, ladies.
Hi, Jen.
Hey.
Hey.
I loved having Diane on, and I loved the way that we were able to separate waivers from the actual services that a waiver could provide or the other, I don't know, ways that we've accessed resources for our kids in this way, because there's almost a stigma and a shame. Like there's so many facets that play into getting services for your kids or finding out what or who to ask or what to say and like how to get results, that it feels cool to be able to just put it all in one space and place. Like, I don't know. I feel like all of us have felt at one time or another navigating all of this that we're alone, or why is this so hard for me as a mom, or why is this like intake knocked the lights out of me, or why, I don't know. There's just so many vulnerabilities exposed when you're asking for help in these ways that I think it's cool that we've talked about it.
I agree. And I think, to me, in general, sometimes I forget what it was like just a few years ago when I was outside of this autism world bubble where I didn't know anything. So even when we talked about doing this series and especially talking about waivers and stuff like that, I almost kind of felt like silly. I was like, well, people probably know this stuff. And then I'm like, no,
Yeah.
maybe they don't. And if they don't, putting this information out there, because I think we've each talked about how we still don't know certain things. And then the things we do know happen to come at us in the weirdest ways. Like Jen just mentioned that adult in her area helped her find a lot of resources. Rachel was at a dinner and two moms were like, hey, you got to do this. You got to do this. I happened to go to a day camp thing for my son where they took the time to educate parents on the resources and stuff they can find. Like, no one sat me down at diagnosis and told me this stuff. I still don't know everything that my state provides. I just know what we have and what we're doing. And that's where we're at right now, but there's probably more. And so you just kind of forget that not everyone knows this and that people aren't told about this stuff for some weird reason. So many people keep it
Nothing is
secret.
streamlined. Yeah,
Nothing. And I also feel like even when I meet a new mom, I give a very basic, hey, make sure you contact this entity, because I don't even feel comfortable because it's all government systems, which we know are so clear and concise. So it's I don't even feel educated enough to explain it to another mom, but I'm just like, hey, talk to these people and have them help you figure out, because that's what happened for me. So it is this weird world where no one discusses it. And I think people are afraid to lose what they have, or they're afraid that they're going to be bumped down a wait list if they share. And I don't know. Sorry if anyone feels like we just did that to them. But
I feel what I've really found about this series really interesting is how different. I mean, I knew it was different. I mean, Canada's a completely different system, which we did talk about in our waiver episode, which our girl Tabitha joined us for. So that was always so fun to have her back at the table. But how different it is state to state, and how the requirements are so different for such a large spectrum of the amount of autistic people that are landing on this earth every day. I cannot believe how convoluted it is, state to state, city to city. I mean, it's not even, it was wild to learn about all the, I knew it was, but the grave differences in what Kimmy has to what Rachel has to what Tabitha has now, even from Arizona to Montana. I mean, the difference in services is just wild. But I will say the consistent thing across the board everywhere is the wait list. Everywhere. It's a wait list, a wait list, a wait list. And then, of course, Kimmy has an adult with autism, so it gravely changes even for an adult.
Yeah.
And I feel like there needs to be some kind of federal standard on like how, like on the infrastructure of this. Like, obviously, states have different funding and different ways of doing things, but like there should be some kind of system where there's caseworkers and there's people that take over, and like we have case managers in Massachusetts. I've yet to meet with one in my life. My daughter's 28. So like,
whereas being Seeley's, like the case workers that she has, I have to meet with every single month. And she's not, you know, I mean, that's at the county level because of her mental health diagnoses. It's like, and the support that we get from that. I mean, it's
and that's here too. Like if you have mental health diagnosis, then you have access to a lot more things. It's just crazy because, and it's forever changing. Like a couple of years ago, we had no waivers for adults at all. Now there's 3. Like, but nobody from any of these agencies reach out to say like, hey, you might qualify for one of these, or hey, you know, and would any of these services benefit you? Like and it's still super vague. Like there's information, but it's very vague information and doesn't really like explain what it means. It just gives you like a convoluted, like vague, like description that tells you nothing, and,
like
and you still don't know anything.
Feel like the people in the beginning should have a liaison that flows them into the school system, that has a liaison that flows them out of school, that flows them into, which I know that's not going to happen anytime soon. But there's zero. It's not fluid. Like it's just choppy, dropped off, choppy, dropped off, choppy, dropped off.
We have a service coordinator that does, this is the one thing they do that helps from going into adult services. Like you have to have somebody assigned for you. They bring you around, they show you the programs, and then, but this one person does all the people aging out. Like in not in the state, but in like a large area. One person.
In like your county, like
it's like no, it's not. It's I guess it is the county, but like our county is like
huge.
There's like 20 different towns. Like it's like it's not like it's like I don't know. It's just it's so bizarre. It's like how would they even be able to keep track to like let you know anything? And then they lost their one place lost their contract, so then like half the plans got sent to one place, half the plans stay at I have no idea who Alyssa's worker is, what agency to go through, like, and frankly I don't have the energy to figure it out. Like even though there are services that she probably would qualify for, I have no energy to sit there. I'd have to make phone call after phone call. You know, they'd be like, oh, you need to call this person. Oh, you need to call this agency. You're on hold. You're on hold. You're on hold. I can't even deal with it. Like,
like
keep your $500. Like, I can't even handle it. Like,
you're like, that's not enough. Well, even looking, like I was looking at some of the stuff in Mass for Kimmy, and I was like, man, and I don't know what other systems, like, I mean, like we talked about, I don't know what other things they have that might be better or might fill in certain gaps. And I'm like, man, I feel lucky that where I am. And then I was talking to Rachel and like detail, we were kind of talking about like our waivers and like how we do stuff and operate like to each other. And I was like, wow, like I wish we had this, or or this is more simple for us, but you can get more opportunities here for help and resources and all that stuff. So it's just interesting to me. And what you were saying, Jen, is ours is kind of supposed to work that way. So like when Jesse first went to be evaluated, the very first time when he was 2, they had someone from our community board, which I talked about in the waivers episode, there. And that person would have kind of guided us through the process. But the school district at that point in time decided that they were not concerned about it. So we were just dropped by everything at the moment. Right. And then when we went back when he was 3, and at 3, it's out of technically early intervention and all that, once you get older than 3, then we had to do that on our own. We had to connect with that stuff on our own. And I didn't quite understand that. I thought that guy was only for early, like no one explains it to you. And in those people's defense, like the waiver we're on right now, our caseworker, she probably doesn't connect with the caseworkers for the adult waivers.
Right.
She can't even give us advice on like how to transfer. Like it's all so siloed that it's super frustrating. And I talked about, maybe I talked about this on the podcast. I know I talked about on a live on Finding Cooper's Voice with Kate, but like when my daughter was diagnosed with her blood disease, we, first of all, I mean, it didn't fully go this way just because, doctors and, all that stuff. But the first year they scheduled us out to come in once a quarter for education on her blood diet. And obviously this is a medical thing. It's different in some ways, but they're like, we really want you to make sure you're educated on this. So they scheduled us to come in monthly. We were assigned a nurse at the practice that is ours. So like if I need something, I have a direct line to that nurse. And like, I have to leave a voicemail. She calls me back, but still I have a person of contact. They had a social worker come sit down with me and go through like all the resources that are available to us, things we could do. I even talked to her about if there were waivers for my daughter, and she was like, not really. Like we went through all stuff, and I'm like, could you even imagine if someone did that for like autism, a lifelong disability? If someone sat you down in the beginning and be like, hey, these are resources that our state provides. And we, like, because I've gotten that even in the ER because they want their money.
Yeah. I didn't even know
gonna say
Freya
that.
had a caseworker. Sorry, until she entered grade 8. And the lady that was doing her intake was like, well, what's her case? That's a caseworker. I was like, oh, she has one. Sent off an email. 2 days later, she's like, oh, she's been assigned to her since she was 4. She's 14. I've never spoken to this woman.
Yeah.
Like never I didn't even know how you contact said person.
My sister had a job at the Department of something for adult disabilities in probably like a town that's like 20 minutes south of here. And she's like, oh, they have caseworkers. They do this. They call anybody that's on their thing, they call and like they give these kids rides. They pick them up. They do things with them. She's like, why don't you get any of this? I go, I don't know. And this is where you just said earlier, or someone said earlier, it's not only state to state, but it's like county to county that, it's like who's running the agency, who's doing. Nobody's ever called me, I can tell you that.
We have missed out on several things like the early intervention flags and stuff with Sealy because we moved. I've gone over that many times. But we also have caught lots of access to things because of other choices that we've had to make with Steve. For instance, going into foster care brought our whole family to our whole case to a whole board. Or like going into the hospital when you get discharged, everybody wants to get paid. So they're like, hey, do you have a waiver? Hey, what's this? Hey, here's your social worker. Like every time Sealy has made any change where her level of care is adjusted or her level of need is adjusted, we get like re-upped with all those people. But at the same time, like no one ever is able to answer questions about said programs because it's not their silo. It's not their thing. They just are, we get like referrals from our doctor's office, but that's in a separate county than us. And one of the qualifiers to get into the program is that she lives in that county. Like everything is so separate and messed up and hidden. And I think that's why these episodes are so cool because like Jaime, I was telling you that you said this one thing about what waivers are for. And instead of it being like this whole cloud of information that I've known about, I got to set it somewhere between like medical and insurance and like what supplements what, Can you just say what you said to me that I say wrong every time?
I can't even remember what it was. You
said waivers are to supplement what Medicaid doesn't cover.
Yes. So waivers are access to Medicaid, but they also, for a lot of states that have them, not all of them, are an access to services. They're designed to help people who need long-term care, basically. I don't know exactly what I said to you.
That's right. It's like gap insurance, or it's like the gap coverage. And in Minnesota, like you can't even qualify for a waiver or consumer support grant that we talked about without having medical assistance first. So like in Minnesota, as you heard, there's like this 5-step process where you need medical assistance. You need to be deemed disabled by the state, which is like a whole other bucket. Then you need the assessment, which generates a report, so that anything that ends up in your bucket of money can then turn into a line item to draw from that budget so that you can support your kids' needs. But I couldn't get Seely's roller skates and walker covered as like a supportive way for her to access outside, which I didn't. But I could do something like that or get some sort of equipment in that way if I said that it supports vestibular stimulation, just like we have for like swings or trampoline, you know. But then it's like, it's got to be supported by a therapist, got to be recommended, got to be supported by that report. I mean, it's like a lot. It's a lot.
You know, outside of some caseworkers, like our caseworker does kind of more of the logistical stuff for us, but like the people who are in it, like these low-level caseworkers, I don't want to say low-level, but you know, like they're the ones helping you fill out the forms and you figure out how to figure this all out. And then the moms who go from their children being toddlers all the way to adults, like we're the only ones that experience going through all of this. And of course, systems change all the time. It very much depends on who your governor is, who's the president. Things go back and forth. Sometimes we're the first people cut out of things, you know, in some ways we're the last people cut out of things. So it's just like all over the place, and it's so hard and confusing. But like, even just being like, this is where you go look and figure it out, I think is so helpful to other parents. And talk to someone with kids around your, you know, your child's age, because they're gonna, you know, be in it with you and they might know a tidbit that you don't know.
Or kids a little bit older.
Yes.
And there are lots of people that have to flag you, that have to ask about stuff. Like for Seely to meet with a speech and OT at work, they want to bill medical assistance. So we provide that. If we didn't have medical assistance, they would be linking us up to that. Like there are a lot of ways where people make sure that you have access or you've turned it down, but you kind of don't know what they're asking if you don't know. It's just like another yes or no question. Like people always, I mentioned this earlier, but Seely does not have, she's been deemed disabled by the state medical review team and not through the Social Security people, like SSA or I don't know. So she doesn't get Social Security, but every time she's discharged from a hospital, they ask if, or some sort of service or whatever, they ask if she has Social Security. And I'm like, no, should I? Like, I don't know, because we've not navigated that. Nobody's brought us through. Like, I still don't know. I don't know, you know?
Don't you love that? I do it all the time. Like, should I be doing that? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then the person's kind of like, I don't know. Like, maybe people do it. And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
And here for children, it's income based. So like when me and Neil weren't married and I didn't work, Alyssa got Social Security as a child for like a year. Then I got a job and she ended up losing her Social Security. And then we actually owed money. And when she got her adult Social Security, they took that money because I literally made like $125 a week. Like it was like I was only working a few hours a day, and it didn't click on my head to report the income because like I thought we were getting it because she was a disabled child, which it is, while she had to have the disability determination, but it also goes on income. So because I got a job, we lost the Social Security. And our income isn't affected by her adult Social Security. That's totally different. But for here in Massachusetts, for a child, it's income based. You have to be low income. If you're low income, you can get Social Security for a child. But like you cannot get it if you like Rachel here. You wouldn't be qualified because Billy would make too much money to like qualify. But Minnesota could be different. I'm just saying that's how, for an example, that's how it is here. But like if you were like a mom who was like home and like couldn't work because of like all that stuff, then you would be able to get it. But like it's not like it's that much money. It's like you're not giving thousands of dollars a month away. Like it's like...
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, it's not enough to hire someone to care for my kid. The thing that Jamie and I were talking about earlier is that like at the highest level, all of these programs, even though they're not federally mandated or uniform, are all your location's answer to keeping our kids and families like ours out of institutions, which they have disassembled. So like there are these different building blocks that come into play at different ages during different criteria. You know, like there's some in Minnesota that you have to have an IQ of this or that. There's certain ones where it's age. There's certain ones where it's like, are you medically fragile? There's certain, like it changes with over the course of time. And I don't know, it never hurt to shake a tree and to call where you are to say, like, is there somebody that can help me? And specifically, like in Minnesota, saying, I need waivered services. I have to have a men's choice assessment. Like, it's almost like when you say, I need an IEP meeting to a school, they have a certain a number of time to get you started in that. Like, when the county hears that here, it initiates a process, like you begin. And it can take 6 weeks to a year to get through the waiver process, but that's in large part to the mental load of the mom that has to fill out 500,000 paperwork.
Criteria sometimes are so weird. Like Alyssa fits into a weird pocket. Like, she is severe. She has intellectual disability. She's nonverbal, but she's not like, she doesn't need intensive home services. Like, it's not like, but like, she's not really in the pocket where she could do the community-based stuff, which you'd have to be like not as severe as she is, and you have to be like more communicative. And then what they're gonna do is when you call, they're gonna be like, okay, well, what do you need help with? Like, I don't know, I just want to know, what can we get? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, if I had like a need, if I feel like I was like, she's jumping out windows, like, this is crazy, like, our life is in shambles, like, we need help, like, I'm sure there's a number to call and like all this, and there's like a department that's gonna help. But like, when like, I'm just kind of like, well, like, is there stuff that she is entitled to or that she qualifies for?
That word is assessment here. I need an assessment. I mean, that's what it is. And then it's like, they had to take it from there. And then you have to jump from silo to silo to nurse that process from A to B. And then, as we all discussed in the waiver one, you get to qualify every year for that lifelong disability, which is so great. It's just a lot of fun to manage.
Yeah. Once you're an adult and you qualify, you don't have to keep doing it.
I'm sure that that's in Massachusetts. Who knows if it's everywhere, you know?
That's what I said. That's what I said here.
Yeah.
And then every 3 years when you're under 18.
I just got a 7-year one for Celie, and I about did a cartwheel on one of the levels of her stuff. I was like, oh my God, look at this.
7 years.
I just got a lifetime designation for Kaya.
Yeah.
I had one that was like, yeah, you need to do this. And I was like, why? They're like, you need to do it every 3 years. I'm like, she's had this since she's been 3 and she's 20. No, like, what do you mean? Or like, I don't know the age that it was, but it's like, because it like changed somewhere like in the middle, and we're like, oh, we're like 47 years overdue for our next eval.
It's a very informative series.
Even what Kimmy was just talking about, like that in between, sometimes you feel like, well, do I really need this? I do want to put this out there. Like, I feel like some people, like, I didn't get on a waiver initially and stuff because I just grew up in a house where it was like, well, you know, you do what you can on your own and you blah, 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 blah. And like, the first time I really talked to someone about it, who's like someone I wouldn't think would even need a waiver and all stuff. But when you're talking about the world we live in the special needs world, things cost a lot, like a lot more than, and our kids have lifelong disabilities, even though we have to get them reevaluated and all stuff to qualify for these. It doesn't really actually go away. But there's things you do in your life that you don't even realize are extra compared to everyone else. So you do, you know, it's okay to say that you need help. It's okay to say like, oh, I can't work a regular job because my son has nowhere to go, or my daughter. And so I have to be home, or I have to work less because, you know, I have to be the one at home to make sure my kid doesn't do this and this because I can't afford someone to be in my home. The whole point of these waivers and programs is to keep our children and adults in the community and in homes and not have to be institutionalized. So, you know, I was just talking to someone here the other day about the CNA program that Colorado has. And she's like, anything you do that a typical parent would not have to do for their typical 9-year-old child, that's a check mark on something that qualifies you, you know, like,
yeah.
You know, if you're having to shower your child and they're out of age, they should be able to shower themselves. But we as moms are just, that's just mom life to us because we've been doing it so long. We're just helping our kids. You don't even think about it.
that it's already a win. Oh my God, Jesse can shower. Now we're just cue dependent. I don't need to use the soap anymore. Or like, I've celebrated these things with Sealy where I'm like, ta-da, this is where we are. And they're like, whoa, red flag.
Yeah,
Like,
don't celebrate them in private. In private, it's kind of goes on exactly what you're saying, Jamie. But like, they're like, oh, what about the shower? Can she shower? And I'm like, yeah, she can go in and she can turn the shower on. And they're like, wow, that's great. Don't need these. And they're like, oh,
Right.
what about this? And she had like a really great like year of like gaining stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, like she's doing this. And they're like, you know, there goes these hours. Like, and then I'm like, but then I had another lady come in and she goes, no, no, no. Yes, she can stand in the shower under the water, but can she appropriately wash herself? But everything with the PCA program here, which is what Alyssa's on, it's almost like physical. Like if you can say, oh, wash your arm, and like kind of model wash your arm, and she can do it, that's not considered physical. Like unless you have to physically go and physically wash her, then you get like the hours for that. So it's like it's just crazy. It's like my thing is like you always have to make it sound like the worst case scenario day is
I
the
said
norm.
that,
It's
yeah.
Because
Your
yeah.
mindset has to be in that to support that so that you answer every question that way. And certainly you can talk about the worst case scenario or the worst day or the day Celie shot her hand with a nail gun because she was unsupervised while I went pee. And like that makes me feel like a failure. But all of those things that are hard to discuss qualify you for help. They all make her score higher. And it's all real. It's all the real Celie stuff. We cannot go into the community with her. She cannot be safe in the vehicle. If I didn't acknowledge that to the waiver person, then the accessibility stuff that we've received to make my car safe, like the acrylic that's going between the drivers and the passengers, that would not be able to be covered. Like all of the stuff that you have to air the linen on are later going to become your supports because you've described all of that.
It's not that you're exaggerating the weaknesses of your children, but I remember her pediatrician's like, well, we're not glorifying anything because this is like has to read a certain way for those approval check marks. And it's not exaggerating anything. It's just you literally don't talk about the good stuff. You just have to focus on, unfortunately, what they cannot do.
And it's like back to the shower. It's like, yeah, she can wipe shampoo in her hair, but she can't scrub it properly. She doesn't understand like the difference of like, oh, it was 90 degrees out today. These armpits need to be like really washed well compared to like, oh, it's the winter and we sat in the house and you can maybe do a quick once over. Like she doesn't understand, oh, I had my period this week. I gotta, clean up even like your legs and stuff like that. Like we know to do that a little heavier or whatever. It's like she doesn't understand that stuff. Yeah, she could swipe soap over her skin, but like she doesn't necessarily know how to clean the right areas at the right times. And so this lady's like, no, she cannot shower herself. She can stand in the shower and let the water run on her, but she cannot properly wash herself. And it's like, oh, okay, like I didn't like necessarily think of it that way. And it was just like, I mean, it was crazy. I was just like jaw to the floor, like, what, are you kidding? And they just like sneakily just was like, because it's like their job is to literally come here and like get her hours down as much as possible.
See, that's where I feel lucky because so far for us, I just feel fortunate because it seems like the caseworkers, and maybe it's just because the age Jesse's at or what, they're really on our side when it comes to that. Like, we never would lie or anything like that. But like the shower question, they would say that. And if I were like, well, yeah, he showers by himself, they'd be like, wait, do you talk him through? Are you making sure he's cleaning certain spots? I mean, he doesn't shower by himself, but like, like they are like, they go through it and they like the caseworker, at least we have right now, is really supportive of like being like, okay, think through because they're here to aid you. But it does seem in other states, their job is almost like,
so, and I wouldn't say
get anyone off the waiver who shouldn't be on the waiver or whatever program, which is
this caseworker definitely, like I said, she came and it was like, oh, no. But this is what the people that are coming above them, they want them to decrease the hours and make sure that every minute, literally, like she'll get 15 minutes for like help with certain things. And this program is all, like I said, physical health. And I'll be like, oh, sometimes she won't get dressed. And they're like, no, like behavior stuff doesn't matter. And I'm like, but it's not behavior, it's processing. If she's exhausted and she's, you know what I mean? Like, in one frame of mind, she's not as cooperative and able to do things as she is another time, but they try to say it's behaviors. And I'm like, this past time I was like, no, that's actually processing. Like, it's not behavioral.
You gotta learn all the
That's
words.
the same difference has happened to us with regard to the like line items for incontinence. As clear as I can be to a bunch of moms that listen, and to you guys, like the incontinence section is something about being potty trained or having control of these systems, kind of is the general question. And while you could say yes for Sealy, she still needs reminding at certain times, definitely with when she has a poop, like there's stuff, but she also has no recall for moisture. So then if she doesn't have all of these cues, then that results in this, which results in this. And then also there's this behavior that happens that has to do with using the bathroom in the wrong spaces and places, which if I didn't answer all of those parts, we couldn't get carpet after it's been soiled. We couldn't get like, I mean, everything is a gateway to something. And so if you quick give the no, she's potty trained. No, that's not our thing. Without really considering all the other components of that bracket, you're limiting your access,
Just knowing the language. And, we've gone through a lot of caseworkers already in our short time being in the different programs and stuff we've been in, because there just seems to be also a lot of turnover in that. And so sometimes people seem to be more educated on certain things than others. And, sometimes when you come at it very educated and knowing what you're talking about, they don't know what else to do but to make sure you get what you say you need, because
Yeah.
I think really going in with a clear mind and being like, and step by step, because I mean, when you get on a waiver here and different programs, you go through, like we're talking about, every aspect of your child's life, in the ways of like life skills, in the ways of education. And so make sure you even write out, because like, this is all the assistance my child needs at school. This is all the assistance my child needs to brush their teeth, to go to the restroom, to take a shower. This is, eating difficulties. Even, like my son does not understand when to stop eating. My son shoves way too much food in his mouth. We have to monitor him eating. Just things like that. And again, it's like you forget these things because you're just parenting, and you go from like having a toddler doing that to having a 10-year-old doing that. And then you kind of lose the perspective of like, oh, a 10-year-old should not be doing that. So just and it's hard and it sucks. Like, it's just like IEPs or any other paperwork where you're over analyzing your kid. It freaking hurts to like see all the things your kid isn't doing and to like have to vocalize that, but it is important. And honestly, I'm glad a lot of those things are in place, so like other people can't take advantage of the system when they don't really need it. So it sucks on one hand, but it's there for a reason. And hopefully the person who you're talking to has good intentions and they're not just trying to get you off.
Gatekeep something. Yeah.
Yeah.
I said, I don't know who I was talking to, but I said recently, over the course of being Sealy's, I've often said these systems are broken. I wish I could help fix them. And then at times, as she has gotten older, I'm like, these systems were built like this to keep people out. Like, it's like checks and balances and siloed things, and everybody does one component and nobody does any service or any particular, there's no follow through. There's just sort of like pass it to the next,
Well, and I was going to say this earlier when we were talking about how like, like a new program comes out, like Kimmy was talking about the waivers in Massachusetts. No one's calling her being like, hey, these programs just introduced. It's like, I worked at a restaurant for many years, and it's like every once in a while they put out a coupon, but only like our regular customers would they really notify about the coupon, because they don't want everyone to know. They're just putting it out there because they need to, and gonna make a certain group of people happy, but they're not gonna tell everyone that. Like, and I get that strategy in some ways, but I'm also like, hey, that's not fair, because people who really need it aren't getting it. And there's people who have no clue. And then I think about people who don't speak English, or people who are new to this country, or people who are new to your state. It's so not fair because they don't know at all. And they have so many other blocks in the road to get there.
Well, everybody, even if it's not sounding so corrupt globally in the community, it's like everybody assumes somebody else is helping you. in
Yeah.
a lot of ways. Like, the school is thinking these people have services. It's not until you like have to check out of a hospital and somebody wants you to have a waiver that you need to get one. It's hard. I mean, it's hard to know.
Yeah, and it's funny because then there are these people that they know like every single thing, every program, everything that that they can access. And then there's me over here that my kids apparently had a caseworker for 10 years, and I've never once had an email, had a letter, I guess, from back in the day. No reach out at all. Hi, I'm your caseworker. I mean, nothing. Anyway,
Hi.
yeah. Hey, hi. So if you get a chance, everyone, and you haven't heard all the episodes, it's very educational, lots to learn. We have some great guests on this series, so make sure you go back and take a listen if you haven't. And we're wrapping her up.
Love you.
So
Happy
thanks.
26, everybody.
Love you, ladies. Thanks for joining us, everyone, today, and we'll see you next time.
Have a
Series
great day.
27.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Talk Like a Mother Parenting Autism podcast. If you are enjoying our podcast, make sure to rate and review us wherever you listen. And if you'd like to support us, you can become a subscriber. Just check out the description of this episode. Give us a follow on Facebook and Instagram for more content, and we'll see you next time.